Time for sound design. Today I'm going to use the Boss Dr. Rhythm DR3 drum machine. A bit of background on this machine. It came out in 2003. It's from Boss or Roland Boss. It is a machine of samples of drum sounds and bass sounds. The pads that you see here at the bottom are actually velocity sensitive. So this is a keyboard, the white keys and the black keys. You can create patterns with it. It has some effects like reverb. It's called total sound control, so it's sort of ambience and sound shaping. It has a stereo out and MIDI in. Let's hook this thing up and then I can show you how I MIDI sequenced it from Ableton and recorded the sounds back into the DAW. So this is how I connected the Boss drum machine. On the first track, it's a MIDI track that sends out to my sound card, the Scarlett 8920 on channel 10. That's the channel that is by default listening for the drum sounds. And then I created this MIDI clip. I'm using kit number 66, hip hop 1, and then the drums sound like this. As you can hear, I used a bunch of different sounds. I used different velocities. When I just hit the pads on the drum machine, they're very velocity sensitive, so you can really play with that. And then I just took a mono out of the drum machine into my sound card. So that's coming in on this channel, channel 2. So that's how the drums sound. And then what I created from it is on the third channel. So I made a copy of that. And I did a bunch of different things to it. So if we first look at the clip, put the transient on the forward arrow and on 50. So basically creates a shorter envelope. And I also pitched down the whole loop to -3. Then I added a redux, so 22.5 kilohertz and 12 bits. I added a bit of compression. I used the preset Rock Parallel Room from the glue compressor in Ableton. I added a saturator. Yeah, and that's it. So then it sounds like this. And that's the basic part of the loop. But then if you look at the whole session, there's some variation. So here at the end of the section, I actually used the original recording. So the envelope is on the original settings, the pitch is on the original settings, and it sounds like this. I chopped up the break and I used the first hit 4 times to sort of signify the end of the loop. Then later on in the break, which you already heard at the beginning, at the start of this video, I pitched down the loop even further. So I made the envelope even shorter and I pitched it down 1 octave. And I also added some automation of the gain. So it sounds like this. And then at the end of the song, I use the same one as in the break, so it's 1 octave down. And I actually also lower the bitrate here, so there's some automation of the bitrate as well. So that's basically how I use the drums. So the original sounded like this. And then what I use in the track. It's not a big difference, but it does make it a bit more sort of glued together, a bit more grittier, because the loop that comes straight out of the machine is a bit clean and too plasticky. And then of course I layered this one with other sounds from Ableton. So let's go into that part. Once I have the drums in Ableton, this is the entire session. But if I just look at the drum parts, let me make everything smaller. So I mainly layered with a bunch of percussion like claps. It sounds like this. Because I felt it's especially the snare from this kit that sounds a bit cheesy and a bit hollow. So that's why I layer it with 3 different claps basically. So that's it for the drums that I used from the Dr. Rhythm. I also used the bass. So I created a separate MIDI channel to create a bass line. And the bass on this kit sounds like this. So it's like a synth bass. And then what I programmed is this. So here you see on channel 4, I have a MIDI clip going to channel 2, because that's the default channel for the bass sound. In this drum machine, you can change that. You can use any channel, but this is the default one. So the bass line I programmed is this one. I use some different velocities as well. It's a 2-bar loop, very basic. And that's what I recorded here on channel 5, as you can see. I used a compressor, the glue compressor, bass, punch and parallel, and a little bit of rolled off the high frequencies in the EQ. But that's the basic loop I use. And then on the second part here, I created a variation. So I basically muted every other note, every other quarter note, to create a sort of more space in the loop. And then here in the end, I reversed the last 2 notes. And that coincides with the repetition of the drum. And for the rest, throughout the track, it's the same bass line. So it's fairly basic. I think the bass is, because it's a synth bass, there's sort of, you have to do less of work with it. With the drum sounds, you can really feel they're maybe a bit outdated, especially with like the snare and the kick. With the percussion, it's quite okay. But with the bass, it sounds like a synth bass. And if you use some velocities and some variation in what you play with it, I think it's a fine bass sound that you can use. Apart from the drums and the bass, I used 2 more sounds from this machine. And the first one is this one, kind of gong cymbal sound. And what I did with this one is I put it into a sampler and created an instrument from it. So this texture is actually that sound. And how I made that is, as you can see here, this is the sample. I put on the loop, forward, reverse. I added some crossfade. I put the release down to 50 milliseconds. And then I added a low cut EQ, a delay, a tremolo, and an auto pen. And then the notes it plays is 3 short notes that kind of go from soft to louder, and then 1 long note. So that's why you have that kind of, in the beginning, is a little bit of a stutter effect. And then the tremolo makes it move in volume a little bit, and then the auto pen makes it go from left to right in a subtle way. And as you can see, there's also a pitch shifter in here, and that is used in the break. So at the start of this video, you heard the pitch going down, sort of kind of like a turntable that stops. That's the pitch shifter automation curve that you see here. And I think together with the drums, that sounds really nice. So that was the third sound I used from this machine, and then I used 1 more percussive sound that I also created an instrument from. So let's go to that. So here on track 13, I use this. The label on the machine says tom, but it's a variation, so it's more like a short percussive sound. So I loaded that up in sampler as well, and as you can see here, the starting point is just after the initial attack. I put the envelope, I increased the attack time a little bit, decreased the release to 50 milliseconds, a low cut EQ at 500 and a delay. And then it's kind of like a shaker. Played with the velocities a bit here. So that's a subtle percussive element in the background. So those are the 4 elements that I took from the Boss Dr. Rhythm DR3. And of course I added much more stuff to it, like melodic layers into Ableton. But if I play you just now the 4 layers, just to give an idea of what you with some sound design can do with this drum machine. So the layers I'm going to play now is the drums, the bass line, the texture, and the shaker. and so on. So I will play the entire track with all the layers at the end of this video. So that's it for this video. I used the Boss Dr. Rhythm DR3 to create some of the sounds in this track. Of course, there's much more layers to it than the 4 layers that I use from this machine. But I think it kind of shows that even though it sounds kind of maybe cheesy and outdated on its own, if you use it in this way and you do some sound design to it and add other stuff to it, it can still sound pretty good. Let me know in the comments, what is your verdict about this machine? Still cheesy or not so much anymore? Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and see you in the next one.